Hello and welcome to The Swing. I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Haris Kermani, but you will know me as HK. And this is The Swing Podcast, where every week we go on at least once or twice to speak about all that's happening in the NBA world. We interact with our live audience. You can follow us on Instagram at The Swing Podcast, where after every Raptors game, we go live to speak about what went down, what was going on, and larger NBA stories as a whole. You may have noticed our name being The Swing. It is based off the idea of the swing offense, the capability to be versatile, to be able to do whatever is required to win. Positions don't matter. And just like the Swing Podcast, it doesn't matter what team you're playing for. It doesn't matter what it is that you are currently doing. If you are making big news on the NBA world, if you are making your name known on the NBA landscape, you will be covered on The Swing because we're here as avid basketball fans to speak to you guys. Now you'll see this beautiful man on my right over here, which is that guy, Owais, my co-host, my partner in crime, Owais Ansari. Introduce yourself, my man.
Well, I am the Scottie Pippen to the Michael Jordan over here. And yeah, well, my name's Owais, and we love speaking about the basketball world, and especially our hometown, the Toronto Raptors. And we're really excited. We want to thank SportsTrends for having us here, and as well as our sponsor, Thrive Fantasy, which you guys can check out. We'll give you guys more details a little bit later on in the show. But yeah, we're really, really excited to bring a bunch of basketball content to you guys, keep you guys informed, and kind of like how, on the basketball court, you swing the ball to your teammate. We're swinging ideas, thoughts, and, analysis together in hopes that you guys kind of learn something, or if not, you guys have some great conversations with us on The Swing. So today's topics, we've got some great topics for you. One, the Toronto Raptors have their biggest challenge of the season yet against the really crazy Brooklyn Nets. Why are they crazy? Why are they so popular? Talk about it, HK.
Absolutely. And look, before we even get into just how insane the Brooklyn Nets are because of the monster that they've created, we do want to talk about our sponsor, which is Thrive Fantasy. Now, Thrive Fantasy, for those who don't know, is a platform through which you can make player prop bets. And if you were to sign up using promo code SWING, you would actually get your money matched up to a maximum of $50. And essentially, what you're doing here is very simple. Do you know how many points LeBron James will score tonight? Are you confident that one man's going to get shut down while another unknown player is going to make himself a star for the night? Prove your knowledge, prove your bets, and sign up on Thrive Fantasy, where you can prop up and make yourself a star today. But going back to what Owais is saying about the Brooklyn Nets, because that is undoubtedly our marquee matchup early on as far as this season's concerned. Yes, we had one earlier against the Milwaukee Bucks, but once the trade happened, what trade is that? Everyone knows James Harden, the Beard, made his way over to the Brooklyn Nets in a landmark deal, which has now gotten them at least two of the top 5 players in the league, with one third banana now in Kyrie, who would very well be in other players' top 10, top 15 in the league as well. So it is just an absolutely monstrous team that you've got going over there. But they did have to give up a number of assets to be able to get there. They lost out on Karis LeVert. They lost out on Jarrett Allen as far as their inside presence is concerned. And that has left them with a team that is incredibly reliant on their firepower of an offense. That being said, it has been more than successful thus far. Just how successful have they been?
Well, they've been incredibly successful. Now, we can talk about clutchness, but we can also talk about how difficult it is on a nightly basis, whatever team is facing the Brooklyn Nets. Like, just imagine you go and you check, okay, today we got to face Kyrie. Okay, we're going to put our best guard on him. And then you go see on the left, you have James Harden waiting there for the ball. And you go to kind of the middle of the court near the free throw line, you got Kevin Durant. And you're like, okay, who do we focus? You start focus one of them, you double team one of them, there's another guy open who can score the ball at the most effective and efficient way possible. And so it is scary to be a team to be playing against the Brooklyn Nets. Now, like you said, all teams to get to that level have to give up pieces, and they did give up some great big pieces that destroyed their depth. Now, the Brooklyn Nets, and the biggest thing about what the issues are of that team currently is more so the defense. The Brooklyn Nets are one of the worst defensive teams in the league right now. They're averaging about 114 points per game that they're giving up to opponents. Now, mind you, most of this is because they are missing a paint present, which is the bigs. They gave up Jared Allen. And right now they're dealing with a small ball situation where Kevin Durant's pretty much their only big on the court at times, and DeAndre Jordan once in a while, but he's pretty much washed up, no offense to him. And defense is a team situation, but also in this current situation, Brooklyn has one key element which is costing them a lot of that rating on the defensive end, and that is Kyrie Irving. He was missing for personal reasons during the course of the season, and he's still missing, but just on the defensive end. Talk about that.
Yeah, no doubt. Look, there is no hiding the fact that the Brooklyn Nets are incredibly reliant on the fact that they're trying to get you in the wing, because once you get inside, this is a team that's 27th in the league in rebounding, 17th in the league in offensive rebounding, and the worst part is they're also league average on turnovers. So it's purely a scenario where they are playing up the fact that their pace of play is so incredibly dominant that it literally just blitzkriegs you. Similar to how teams of yore, whether it be the old Houston Rockets, whether it be the old Phoenix Suns, which is funny because it's pretty much the same coaching staff that's running that Brooklyn Nets team. And they're playing very much the same way. But you're getting into this scenario where we talk about players who have had legendary seasons are those we call 50, 40, 90, 50% from the field, 40% from the 3-point line, 90% from the free throw line. But can you imagine the Brooklyn Nets are doing that as a team for the season, save for the free throw percentage being slightly lower at 80? That is an absolute cheat code. Best part of it is that they're doing that while also leading in the actual field goals made. 14 threes a game that they're hitting, and they're second in the points scored on the offensive end. It's just an absolute revelation that they've put together. And the reason this is all functioning as it should at this moment is because James Harden has come in, and as much as people were worried that this is going to be a dribble machine, Charles Barkley called them the dribble bros that are there with Kevin Durant. But what has instead happened is James Harden, with 11.2 assists a game, is leading the league in assists. He's taken a backseat on the offensive end to instead focus on getting Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and the other guys that are there the best shots that they can get. And they're responding by having the best seasons of their career as far as efficiency is concerned. Now, obviously, we're at a small sample size. We're early on in the season, but the signs are ominous to say the least.
Absolutely. And, the thing about having a championship team is that everybody has to come together towards that goal, and egos have to be left outside of the door. And having a coaching staff that has been very successful. Unfortunately, of course, Steve Nash is not someone who has won a championship, but he's been one of the top players in the league and understands, what it takes to be at a high level team. Kevin Durant being a champion, an ex-champion, and Kyrie Irving also being an ex-champion. These guys kind of know what it takes and what sacrifices are needed in order to be successful. Now, part of that has to do with, of course, the volume in terms of shooting. How long is someone holding the ball, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Who's the main guy they're going to close with? But the cool thing about all this is that in the fourth quarter specifically, this team is the most clutch and distribute the ball so evenly. All three of their okay, let me just tell you a very crazy stat right now. To the guys watching the swing and ladies, whoever, the top three players in the fourth quarter, just the top three players in the entire NBA, all are on the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah.
The top players, Kevin Durant, who averages 8 points. James Harden, the second one, 8 points. Kyrie Irving, 8 points. And the crazy thing is they're shooting at such a high percentage. Kevin Durant's shooting at 62%, and so is Kyrie Irving. And Kyrie Irving, surprisingly, is a +4 in the fourth quarter. So you really need to step on the throats of this team. Otherwise, in the fourth quarter, they can just take it away. And you saw a lot of the clutchness over the course of the last 5 to 10 games. That game against the LA Clippers was huge. James Harden played excellent, but Kevin Durant hitting some big shots, Kyrie playing some great ball as well. That is a defensive juggernaut, quote unquote, as well, right? So imagine the capability of these offensive superstars and how effective they've been in the fourth quarter, specifically, that they can get away with 1 or 2 quarters and still end up victorious at the end of the day. Now, speaking of which, look at the parallels, right? It's almost opposite for the Toronto Raptors, where they've been playing very well. However, one small stretch costs them the game. Talk about that.
Yeah, and look, we speak about the fact that the NBA is a game of runs. No two ways about it. A 10-point lead, a 15-point lead, a 20-point lead is nothing as to what it used to be. And for the Toronto Raptors, that has been undoubtedly their Achilles heel. The amount of double-digit leads that they've given up this year has just been staggering. It's ridiculous. And that's why it's so odd to be able to see them at 9-12 at this point. And it's weird because you're looking at the other teams that are above them, and there are at least 4 to 5 teams that have worse net ratings than the Toronto Raptors do, but it's just been a scenario where you haven't won in those clutch moments, and you haven't won in the times where you need to be able to actually put your foot on the throat of the opposition. But we're getting
what Kevin said.
I did. Listen to what Masai feels about Brooklyn, no doubt, but it is a completely different Brooklyn team that we are now going up against. But that's what I was trying to talk to Oasis about even before we got onto this broadcast, that if you were to look at just the team's stats on paper in the sense of what they've achieved, how they're doing so far in the regular season, and just purely from a perspective of how good is their offense, how good is their defensive rebounding, how good is their pace, this is an actually very evenly matched team. But much as you spoke about the fact that the Brooklyn Nets have a 3-headed monster, the Raptors, on the other hand, have been relying on their depth to be able to push them through. And they're really going to need to do that now because, once again, OG Anunoby is not going to be there for this game, still dealing with his calf strain.
Yeah, it could be a calf strain. It could be a heart issue because he's still hurt by the fact that Big Scarf Serge Ibaka has left the team. But nonetheless, OG is an integral part of the offense and defense. You said he's the league leading steals guy, 2.1, I believe, something like that. But on top of that, he was shooting a ridiculous percentage from the 3-point line. He started the season off really struggling there, but when he got hot, it was just as if this guy catch and shoot cannot miss, right? And so missing him is difficult. But here's what I think. This is my opinion on the situation. Yes, OG is going to be away, so that takes away from our offense a little bit, and of course the defense in terms of a starting defender. Yep. But we have had the emergence of a few players that have done effective jobs on the defensive end, and one guy in particular that was amazing on the offensive end. Start off with both Stanley Johnson and Yuta Watanabe. These two guys have been the glue from the bench who have been checking some of the top players in this league and still being able to contribute to some extent on the offensive end. You've seen Yuta grab some incredible offensive rebounds, which is something that we've been struggling with. Mm-hmm. And, deflections, that size. But the most important thing about these guys is that they've been disciplined, which is something that we haven't seen from two other guys that we expect to be better defenders, and that is Pascal Siakam and Chris Boucher. So what's the difference between these two guys? Watanabe and Stanley Johnson both understand is you don't necessarily need to bite on every fake. And Pascal jumps around a lot, hacks a lot. Boucher does the same thing. What happens when you bite on these fakes is you're out of the play, right?
Yeah.
And that's really difficult to recover from, especially in this quick league. And a team like Brooklyn can get you into foul trouble because James Harden has lived off of creating fouls, creating shots. So if you're Pascal or Boucher or whoever is defending guys like this, you have to understand that, you can try to be handsy with them, but they'll find a way to get you into foul trouble, right?
Yeah.
And so that is extremely necessary to make sure that we are a defensive discipline team for this particular game. And that can cause a lot of trouble for the Brooklyn Nets. Now, the one player I was going to talk about that I feel like is going to be the X factor to this game, and someone who has pretty much filled in the offensive, almost what we were missing from OG, that's been Norman Powell. I really think that he has stepped up his game. Once he's been playing as a starter, he's been absolutely on fire. And so what do I need him to do this game? Well, for starters, I would love it if he attacked some of the star players. What happens if Brooklyn gets into foul trouble, right? You get Kevin Durant into foul trouble, or you get James Harden into foul trouble. I feel like there's not many guys on that team that can come up and fill those roles or those shoes, of course. So you get one or two of those guys in foul trouble, you're golden. And Norman has shown the ability in both of these games, or most of these games, when he's starting, is that he can score from the three-point line. And if he gets that going, he can also penetrate, slash really, really well. And, maybe dunk on some heads. You don't know. So I feel like that strategy should be applied to this game in particular and really see if they can get the Brooklyn Nets into foul trouble early and take over from there.
No, I agree completely. And especially for Norman Powell, a guy who's just coming in on an absolute heater as far as his offense is concerned, 5 straight games in which he scored 20 points or more. And I think Kevin here has also made a great point with regards to the points in the paint being an absolutely key determinant of whether we're going to be able to win this game. And that's where Pascal Siakam comes in. And as much as you spoke about that, defensive discipline, that's where Pascal Siakam has pretty much been losing minutes on the floor, because not only is he getting himself into foul trouble, he's doing it at a rate that is leading the league at the moment. He's almost averaging a little over 4.3 fouls a game, which is between 4 to 5 fouls a game. That is just, it's unacceptable. You can't be that, especially when you are expected to be either option 1 or option 2 on this team, not only on the offensive end, but you are essentially that unicorn that can do all of these different things on the floor, attack in the paint, spread the floor out, and mostly create disruption on the defensive end, because he is, alongside Lowry and VanVleet, our best defenders that are going to be playing on that day. So for him, much like we need to get the other guys on the Brooklyn Nets in foul trouble, we need our star in Pascal Siakam to step up. But speaking of stars, we're going to take this opportunity to now speak about another big thing that's coming up, which is the All-Star game. But before we get into that, Oasis, just a quick one-word thing. Who is winning the game, Toronto or Brooklyn? Put it out there.
You know what? I'm going to go with the Toronto Raptors. I'm going to say that this is the game that they clutch it out and they send another statement to the league to remind them, hey, we've got a lot of champions and a lot of dogs on this team, so be ready, because it's going to turn around right now.
I like it. I like it. Well, I like the outstage thing. I think it's going to be hard to be able to get past a James Harden, but I'm on for it. Let's see it. Let's get our signature win, and let's get this season back on the road, back into the playoff scenario as the Toronto Raptors deserve to be, and back with our stars getting recognized. On that note, for those who don't know, the NBA All-Star Game has been officially confirmed. March 7th in Atlanta, we are going to have an All-Star Game despite all of the bubble troubles that we've had. Bubble troubles, all the COVID issues, all of these players. The injuries. It has just been a wild season. But with all those injuries to stars comes an opportunity. It comes the chance for someone new to be able to shake up what are, the old heads as far as the All-Stars are concerned. And the voting has already started now. So in fact, today is a double voting day. So if you haven't, go to NBA.com and vote for who you think should be starting. And not only are we going to find out the starters in the next, I believe, 2 weeks, we're going to get that information, but then the bench comes in. And as far as now we know, the entire voting process is going to be the same as it was last year. So even for the starters, 50% of the vote is coming from the fans. A quarter of the votes are coming from actual players voting for who they think should be in, and the final fourth of it comes from the coaching staff. So it means that you're not going to have scenarios where it's just purely the top vote getters that get in. That being said, the first run of the fans have come back as far as the All-Star voting is concerned, and much of it is expected as far as who the top lead vote getters are. We see that Kevin Durant has secured the most votes altogether with 2.3 million to be leading not only the East but the NBA at large for the front court. LeBron James follows close behind, and then you get Stephen Curry as the leading guard for the West. But where it is a little bit, I don't know if you want to say surprising, but at least interesting, Bradley Beal is leading the votes for the East, obviously having an absolutely insane season, likely going to win the scoring championship this year. But is he going to be starting for the East? What do you think, Oasis?
He damn should be. Man, you see this guy's balling out. He just doesn't have a team, unfortunately. You know what? I felt like he deserved it last year as well. I think he was balling out, but a little bit of a snub. But in this situation, I think he's proven himself over and over again that he's one of the most, not the most elite, but in that top echelon of scorers in general. His offensive versatility, his clutchness have been there. So I personally think this year, given everything that's happened, he still deserves to be a starter on the East starting lineup.
No, that's completely fair. And you know what? I wouldn't be mad if you got it in. But much like you have your vote, I also have mine. And I've gone ahead and put together who I think should be the starters for both.
All right. Yeah, let's break it down, man. Okay, let's start right away from the front court of the East. You have Malcolm Brogdon. Talk about that.
Absolutely. And I've been waiting to get the opportunity to say this because Malcolm Brogdon has been just the absolute under the radar star as far as the Indiana Pacers are concerned and as far as the NBA has been concerned, because Milwaukee has still not recovered from losing out on a talent like Malcolm Brogdon. They've tried with Eric Bledsoe. They've tried now with Drew Holiday, who could very well be able to get in. But to me, Malcolm Brogdon, who not only is having a career year scoring-wise, but he's also doing it on insane efficiency while also leading an Indiana Pacers team that, first of all, has now lost Victor Oladipo, right? They're not going to have Karis LeVert for the season, which came as a result of that trade. And, thankfully, Karis LeVert is likely going to be okay after the diagnoses that came about his medical condition. But in the end, this is now a two-man team that is going to be absolutely killing it. Sabonis is having a crazy season. He's not going to start, but he's a shoe-in for the bench for me. But Malcolm Brogdon, in a year where the Eastern guards, a lot of them have dealt with injuries that would otherwise preclude them from making the All-Star game, Jimmy Butler being the first. And much like Kevin's saying, Kyrie is no doubt an all-star, and Brooklyn is going to have all three of their stars in this team. But I believe Malcolm Brogdon should be rewarded for just what an incredible job he's done leading this Indiana team to a level much higher than what would have otherwise been expected, given the fact that they are dealing with the kind of injuries they are. They're sitting there in that fifth seed, very easily could jump in much higher than that. And to me, that is exactly the kind of story you want for an all-star, a guy who was a number 15 out of lottery pick, got rookie of the year in a year where it pretty much was like, no one else is really going to win. So they kind of gave it to Brogdon. So he didn't get respect there. Had a 50, 40, 90 season.
That was insane.
Milwaukee Bucks. Under the radar completely. No one even talks about it, but Brogdon was, to me, the key piece for them. And then now to get the opportunity where he's coming off a year where he had some injuries, needed to get his name back, needed to show exactly why he's so great. And he's doing that in spades. Reward Malcolm Brogdon with a starting position.
Right. The NBA and the fandom behind Malcolm Brogdon, they do call him a leader. Why? Because he looks a lot and talks a lot like President Obama. Yeah. So, I like that pick. I think that's one of the underrated picks. Someone that, who doesn't really watch too much basketball might not even think about voting for a guy like Brogdon, but I do agree with you. Extremely talented player, extremely high IQ, and what an incredible coaching staff. You've seen a lot of success. Now we have James Harden, Joel Embiid, Antetokounmpo, and Durant as the other four guys, which are, in my opinion, just clear as day. Not much to talk about there. Now, can we move on to the West side for you, or did you want to expand a little bit about these guys?
No. I mean, I think, like I said, most of these are pretty much shoo-ins. You're going to see that not only from the voting perspective, but frankly, their performances as well as their team standings make it so that it's really hard to be able to kind of choose anywhere. But like I said, part of what makes this picking the starters more interesting in some ways is because of the fact that they still keep that 2 backcourt, 3 frontcourt situation. On the other hand, when you get to the bench, they got rid of that entire thing. So you could have all of these different positions get represented, and that's where you can get some crazy combinations. But moving on to the West, and again, to me, that front court picks itself. They have not only been the absolute leaders for each of their teams, but in the case of someone like Nikola Jokic, to me, he's been the early season MVP alongside Kevin Durant. So both of those guys have been clear-cut the best 2 players from the East and West, respectively, as far as this early season is concerned. So they're in. The only one that I was myself, debating in between of was that Donovan Mitchell pick.
Yeah, and talk about that. I'm very confused. What about Donovan Mitchell has led you to, choose him?
Yeah, so it's a 2-part thing for me. First and foremost, I always want to reward a team that has not only outperformed what expectations have come in with them, but they're doing it at a level that is pretty much leading the league. Utah has been, as Kevin said, sitting up top in the Western Conference standings. They have been just absolutely monstrous, and they've been doing it against teams that are upper echelon playoff teams. And they're not only beating them at home, they're beating them away, and they're just absolutely killing him. Yeah, and Shaq, 100%. He was calling Donovan Mitchell out. He was calling Rudy Gobert out. He's been calling the Utah Jazz out, and they have just been shutting him up left, right, and center with their performances and leaving absolutely no doubt. So to me, who I was in between was either Donovan Mitchell or to get Dame in there, because Dame is just purely having such an insane individual season that he will likely get in. But to me, the Portland Trailblazers have been disappointing as far as their performances are concerned. They also themselves are now dealing with injuries. So with CJ McCollum gone for who knows how long, we don't know what that's going to look like. So in that vein, Donovan Mitchell and the Utah Jazz, playing some of the best ball in the West, deserve an opportunity to be a starter in this league, a starter for the Western Conference All-Stars, and that's my pick.
I love it. I love that underdog pick. However, it's a long season. First of all, I want to remind the fans. And the second thing is, that, Shaquille O'Neal is a perennial winner. Okay. He has won many, many times. And to say that he's going to eat his words, just wait to the playoffs. Utah Jazz have absolutely zero chance of making the finals. So,
I disagree.
Okay. All right. We'll get back to that some other time on the swing. But right now, I'm just going to quickly break down my picks on the East. And I think the only surprise pick here is probably Jason Tatum. And the way, apart from his injury, the way that this guy has just been balling out and being clutch over and over again. Few game winners here and just taking over games. He deserves to be there on the. Okay.
You're telling me KD's not starting? Tell me KD's not going to start. Stop it.
Okay.
Stop.
If anything, we're going to take Antetokounmpo and put him Kevin Durant instead of Antetokounmpo. But I'm just, you get to do underdog picks. I get to do underdog picks. And in that case, I want him, I'm not a fan of Kevin Durant per se. So screw that guy. We're putting Jason Tatum there. Okay.
Okay.
Now we're moving on to the West. Yes, I'm a little bit emotional sometimes. Okay. Now we go on to the West. Yes, Portland has had a very, very inconsistent season, but Dame Lillard and CJ McCollum, both, in my opinion, up until recently, maybe if you talk about the Brooklyn Nets, are the best backcourt in the league. Okay. These guys have proven over and over again that they can take over at any point and have been. McCollum, of course, McCollum. McCollum has won the freaking Portland Blazers some of the games just by taking over purely instinct basketball, isolation, whatever it is needed to get that team a dub. CJ McCollum, in some cases, has played even better than Dame. Okay. So I think that if there is an underdog in that starting lineup, it is CJ. Of course, as a starter, it would be cool to see him there, but is he going to be there? Probably not. Kawhi, we already know, but Paul George is another one that I feel like is getting talked down on quite a bit just because of his inability to score, or just the really bad games that he's had in the playoffs. So
Pandemic P has recovered quite well, no doubt.
He has, but you have to understand. What I don't understand is the disrespect. Like, am I a Paul George fan just based off of who he is? I'll keep that for another time. You can talk to me personally. But when it comes to basketball, Paul George, let's not forget this guy when he was on Indiana was absolutely legendary, cutthroat, and was one of the rising and most amazing offensive superstars, and also did it really well on the defensive end.
Yep.
And, you talk about his move to OKC and then this and that, and, he struggled a little bit, but why? He had to deal with other superstars, and he is a guy that needs to have the ball in his hands in order to be successful. He's not a catch and shoot guy. He is perennial. Give him the ball, get out of the way, and he can create for you. Okay. And that's what you've seen, especially with that change in coaching with Tyronn Lue being the head coach of the LA Clippers. And so a lot of time, you have Paul George taking over games, being the main ball handler. You won't really see Kawhi bringing the ball up, right? Or if anything, he kind of sets up Kawhi in the post. But Paul George has just been incredible. He's been shooting lights out from even three-point line, but he's been really difficult to stop when he's hot, and he's been pretty much hot all season. It seems that the shoulders aren't bothering him as much right now. We'll see how it goes as the season continues. But, man, put that guy on the starting squad. LeBron James, people are like, well, about LeBron James, I love that, but these are my picks. So I get to pick. I'm a fan, okay, of whatever the hell I'm a fan of. And that's my picks. So that's what we have for me. Agree or disagree?
Hey, much like Kevin said, love the optimism. And you know what? It's highly likely that all of these guys that we have, even if they don't get an opportunity to get to be starters in the league, once the starters get announced, we'll get the opportunity to now have that debate, really just break down with you guys who you think should be making the All-Star team this year. Much of the starters have been in many ways written in stone just because of the fact that the voting is always going to push it that way. And even if the coaches and the players are slightly leaning another way, if you have such a massive lead as you look like we're going to have with regards to not only the front court, especially in the East and West, like LeBron James is 100% going to start, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, first of all, he should. I disagree. But it's just coming down to the fact that it is going to be a lot more interesting to be able to discuss who the bench players are going to be. And that is going to be one of our segments in a future episode. So definitely stay tuned. Keep interacting with us. But with that, Oase, we are coming to the end of our premiere episode of the Swing Podcast on SportsTrends. Once again, thanks so much to SportsTrends for giving us the opportunity to go live on here with all the fans. We want to be here. We want to be here consistently, and we want to interact with you on a night in, night out basis. So please engage with us. Make sure to follow not only the SportsTrends Canada page on both Facebook and YouTube, but also follow us on Instagram at The Swing Podcast. And we're also the Swing Podcast on YouTube, where you can see our full-length episodes. So we'll be coming back, as always, live post-game at the end of the next Raptors one, which will be, as said, 7:30 p.m., Brooklyn Nets. Going to be a big game. It's going to be a fun night. How will the Raptors follow up a historic night? Stay here with us, and you'll find out. But until then, it's that guy Oasis. This is HK, and we will see you next time on The Swing. Peace.